The cry across the stars were never silent. They hummed with energy, whispered with radio waves, and carried the voices of countless civilizations. But on this night, across the cold void of space, one voice cut through everything. Got it. Was a scream. Not a scream of one person, not even a single city, but the cry of an entire world. The transmission began with static and the desperate sound of alarms. A broken voice followed Alien, trembling, almost choked by fear. "This is Vera Prime. We are under attack. Please, anyone, help us." The galaxy heard it. Every major power, every minor colony, every trading post that had the right kind of receiver caught the same message. And for the first time in decades, silence fell on the Galactic Council. The Vera were not weak. They were not small. Their homeworld was rich. Their fleets were proud, and their allies many. For them to call for help meant something. Unthinkable had happened. The enemy had returned. Whispers spread through the chamber of the council. Alien leaders argued in low tones, claws tapping against desks, wings fluttering in nervous energy. Their words were fast, sharp, fearful. They did not want to admit what the signal meant. They wanted someone else to say it first. But deep down, they all knew. The sound in the background of the message, the thunder of weapons that could rip ships apart, the unending roar of fire sweeping over cities, was the mark of only one species. A predator older than many stars, a terror that most of the galaxy had chosen to forget. The Zal. For centuries, the galaxy had lived in uneasy peace, pretending the Zal had gone extinct, pretending they were myths. Now, as the cries of Vera Prime filled the council's chamber, the lie was broken. But no one stood, no fleet volunteered. No admiral raised their voice. Instead, arguments began. Sending aid would risk our own systems. Barked a scaled counselor from the Koresh Dominion. The Vera were arrogant. Let them suffer their own fate. Hissed another from the fractured Anner clans. They are too far, muttered a third, eyes shifting nervously. By the time we arrive, the world will already be ash. Cowards. Every one of them dot while they spoke. Vera Prime burned. The transmission crackled again, stronger this time. The alien voice was filled with despair. Please, if anyone can hear us, we cannot hold out much longer. They are killing us by the millions. For the love of the stars, someone answer. The voice broke into sobs. Then came the thunder of explosions. Then silence. For a moment, even the council leaders fell quiet. They felt the weight of it, the raw fear. But fear did not make them brave. It made them weak. They began drafting resolutions, excuses, political maneuvers. They promised investigations. They suggested waiting for more evidence. None of them noticed that one small delegation was not part of their games. The humans sat in silence, their faces hard, their eyes shadowed by the glow of the chamber's lights. Earth was young in galactic terms. A small world on the edge of mapped space, known for its dangerous environment, its reckless people, and its short history of spaceflight. To most of the galaxy, humanity was little more than an odd curiosity, the Deathworlders, a species that had evolved in constant war against their own planet's cruelty. And yet, it was those very traits that now mattered most. As the council bickered, Admiral Marcus Halley of the Terran fleet leaned forward, his voice calm but heavy. We heard. The call, he said. His words echoed in the chamber. And we will answer it. The other delegates turned to him in shock. Ridiculous. Spat the Koresh. Your fleets are small. Your resources pitiful. You will only add to the body count. You will die. For nothing, sneered a winged delegate from the Anner clans. Admiral Halley did not flinch. He simply stood, his dark uniform catching the light, his gaze unyielding. We know what death looks like, he said. We have lived beside it since the beginning of our species. But when a world cries out, When families beg for help, humanity does not look away, we answer. Silence followed. No one could argue not truly. They mocked, they whispered, they dismissed, but not one of them had the courage to do what humanity had just promised. That night, the cry of Vera Prime faded into the void. But somewhere, far away, in the shipyards of Earth, engines roared to life. Massive carriers and destroyers awakened, their crews boarding in silence, their orders sealed but understood. The galaxy had sent out a cry for help, and only humanity dared to rise. As the first Terran warships slipped into faster-than-light travel, their comms officers replayed the message one last time. The desperate voice of Vera Prime, the sound of fire, thunder, and terror. And then, with grim determination, they answered. "This is Earth Command. We are coming." The void shivered. The stars bore witness. Humanity was on the move, and the galaxy would never be the same. Council of Cowards, the Galactic Council Chamber, was built to impress. Its ceiling stretched higher than a battleship's hangar, walls of living crystal glowing with faint light. From this room, countless civilizations had decided wars and treaties. But tonight, the hall was filled with something worse than war. Cowardice. The delegates had all heard the cry of Vera Prime. They had all listened to the desperate voices begging for help. Children screaming in the background, cities burning. Yet none of them moved. None of them would commit a single ship. The Koresh Dominion's scaled ambassador thumped the table with his claw. The Vera brought this on themselves. They angered the Zal long ago. Why should we sacrifice our fleets for their arrogance? A ripple of uneasy agreement ran through the chamber. From the Anor clans, the winged representative clicked her beak. Their world is far from our borders. By the time aid arrives, we would lose more than we could save. Our people will not bleed for theirs. Others followed with excuses, their words sharp but hollow. They spoke of distance, of risk, of uncertain outcomes. Behind their words was the truth fear. Every species in that chamber had their own legends of the Zal, stories whispered at night of a predator race that devoured without mercy. Stories they told their young to keep them obedient. But legends had become real again, and now the council trembled. Admiral Marcus Hawley of Earth sat silently through it all. His face gave nothing away, but his hands were tight against the armrests of his chair. Around him, the human delegation waited, their eyes cold as ice. They had come to listen, but the stench of weakness was choking them. Then, at last, the council speaker struck the central gong. The sound echoed like thunder. "Delegates," he said, "we must decide. Shall we form a joint fleet to aid the Vera?" Silence. The chamber that once roared with debates was now quiet, like a tomb. No one wanted to be the first to commit. The speaker looked around, his eyes wide. "Surely one among you will answer? Surely the council cannot turn its back?" Still no answer came. Heads turned down, wings folded close, claws tapped nervously. One by one, they avoided his gaze. Finally, the scaled ambassador broke the yowl. "Silence. Let the record show the Koresh Dominion refuses." Another followed. The Anor clans refuse. The Dorun refuse. The Kaleri refuse. The word spread like a disease. Refuse, refuse, refuse. Every refusal was like a hammer, striking the council's heart. With each one, the galaxy grew smaller, darker, weaker. Then, Admiral Hawla stood. The movement was simple, but it drew every eye. The humans had been quiet, too quiet, and now the entire chamber braced for their words. Hale's voice was deep. "Steady. The Terran Union will answer the call." The speaker froze. So did the council. It was as if a bomb had gone off, silent but shaking the air. "You cannot be serious," hissed the Koresh ambassador. "Your fleets are nothing compared to the Zal. You'll be destroyed before you reach orbit. The Aner delegate flared her wings. Do you want to drag the rest of us into war? Do you want the Zhao to notice Earth as well? Hale did not raise his voice. He did not shout, but his words cut sharper than any blade. You all call yourselves leaders. Yet when a world cries for help, you hide behind excuses. Humanity will not. We will stand, even if we stand alone. Gasps echoed around the chamber. Some laughed bitterly, others muttered curses, but none could deny the fire in his eyes. The speaker leaned forward, his voice almost trembling. Admiral Hao, do you understand what you are saying? If you face this owl, you may face extinction. Hale met his gaze. We understand. Humanity has always lived beside extinction. On Earth, everything tried to kill us: storms, beasts, even ourselves. Yet we endured. That is why you call us Deathworlders. Because we do not give up. Not when there's a chance to fight. Not when lives are on the line. The silence after. His words was heavy, almost crushing. No one dared to answer. No one dared to mock him now. At last, the speaker sighed. His hands trembled as he struck the gong once more. Let it be recorded. The Galactic Council will not intervene. Humanity will act alone. The decision was made. As the council chamber emptied, the alien delegates whispered to each other, their voices filled with disbelief. Some said the humans were mad. Others said they were doomed. A few, deep in their hearts, wondered if perhaps they might succeed. Hale and his officers left in silence. They walked with the calm of soldiers who had already accepted the cost. Behind them, the council's great chamber seemed smaller than ever before. The galaxy had chosen fear. Humanity had chosen fire. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, the Zal waited, hungry for blood. The Terran fleet awakens Admiral Marcus Hall stood at the edge of the Terran fleet's command deck, staring through the reinforced glass. Beyond, dozens of massive starships floated in silence, their hulls dark against the backdrop of stars. They looked asleep, like titans waiting for someone to wake them. Earth had not gone to war in decades. The fleet was strong, but most had forgotten what it meant to march into fire. Yet now, with one decision, they were being called to arms. All channels ready? Hale asked. Yes, Admiral, replied Commander Rhea Calder, his second in command. Her eyes were sharp, but Hale could hear the unease in her voice. She, like every officer here, knew the risk. Hale gave a small nod. Patch me through. A chime rang, and across every ship, from the smallest corvette to the great supercarriers, the screens lit up. Thousands of faces stared back. Human. Men and women in uniforms, engineers in oil-stained jumpsuits, pilots still strapping on flight helmets. The heart of the Terran Union was listening. Soldiers of Earth. Hale began, his voice steady. You have heard the Council's choice. The galaxy has turned its back on Vera Prime. They would leave a world to burn, because they fear the Zal. But fear has never stopped us before. He paused, letting the words sink in. The silence was thick, charged with tension. Some say, we are Deathworlders. That we are dangerous, reckless, too wild to be trusted. Maybe they're right. But what they forget is why we survived on a death world in the first place. We survived because we stood together. Because when one of us fell, another picked them up. Because when danger came, we didn't run, we fought. A murmur swept through the comms, soft at first, then louder. Hale continued, his tone sharpening like a blade. The Zal think we will break. They think we will kneel, like the Council has. But we are not here to kneel. We are here to fight. Not for power, not for glory, but because someone cried for help, and we heard them, and we will not ignore that cry. He leaned closer to the console, his eyes burning with conviction. I will not lie to you. Many of us may not return. This war will test us like nothing before. But if we must fall, then let it be as humans standing, defiant, unbroken. The silence broke. Cheers erupted across the fleet. Some shouted, others pounded their chests or saluted their screens. The sleeping Titans were awake now. Commander Calder smiled faintly. They believe in you, Admiral. Hall shook his head. No, they believe in us. That is all that matters. The hangars of the fleet roared with activity. Engines thundered. To life as fighters rolled into position. Engineers scrambled, loading torpedoes and tightening armor plates. Crews painted symbols on their ships' flags, names, memories of home rituals for soldiers who might never see Earth again. On the carrier Resolute, a young pilot named Ash Kellen tightened the straps of his harness. His hand trembled as he traced the names scrawled on his fighter's hull. For Vera. He had never heard of the planet before yesterday, but now he would risk his life for it. On the battleship Atlas, gunner crews loaded the rail batteries, each shell taller than a man. Their captain barked orders, his voice shaking the steel halls. The galaxy will remember this day. Fire every shot as if it is for Earth itself. Across the fleet, the old fire of humanity, the fire that had once built empires and crossed oceans, was alive again. Hours later, the Terran Union's fleet began to move. Engines blazed like suns, tearing away the silence of space. One by one, the ships aligned, their formation sharp and deadly. Scouts reported jump coordinates. The Vera system was ready to receive them. Admiral, Calder said quietly, once we enter the Vera system, there is no turning back. Hawley nodded. There was never turning back. Not for us. The countdown began. Jump drive sequence. Initiated. Fleet synchronization engaged. All ships locked to command signal. Through the glass, Hawley watched the stars blur. The hum of the jump drive grew louder, a deep vibration in his chest. Around him, his officers stood straight, shoulders squared, fear buried beneath steel. 3, 2, 1. The stars shattered into light. The Terran fleet vanished. But somewhere beyond that leap, waiting in the shadows of Vera Prime, the Zal were already hunting. Their fleets were vast, their weapons older than human history, their hunger endless. The galaxy thought humanity would be crushed. The Council whispered that Earth had signed its own death sentence. But as the humans surged through the void, every ship burning with defiance, one truth became clear. The Zal would not be fighting prey. They would be fighting predators. Fire over. Their stars snapped back into view. The Terran fleet erupted into existence above Vera Prime, the void shimmering from the violent tear of jump space. Admiral Marcus Hale's eyes went straight to the planet. From orbit, Vera looked like a scarred jewel-vast continents burning. Oceans lit with streaks of fire. Cities once bright with life now sent columns of smoke spiraling into the atmosphere. God, whispered Commander Calder, her voice cracking. We're too late. No, Hawley said firmly, though his heart pounded with the same fear. We're right on time. The sensors wailed. Dozens of crimson markers lit the display. The Zal fleet was already here. Jagged warships, black as night and spiked like predators, formed a noose around the planet. Their hulls gleamed with strange symbols, their weapons glowing with energy older than most civilizations. They're moving to intercept, Calder warned. Hawley straightened. Signal the fleet. Battle formation Delta. Fighters forward, carriers behind. Battleships open the guns. Engines flared across the Terran fleet as ships shifted into their killing dance. Fighters shot forward like arrows, hundreds of them, breaking into spear formations. Carriers launched more waves in quick bursts, their hangars glowing with constant fire. Then, without warning, the first Azal salvo hit. A crimson beam tore through the void, slicing past the Resolute and grazing one of the smaller frigates. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash, broken into dust in seconds. On the command deck, Calder flinched. Frigate Dawnbreaker lost. The names hit like knives. Hale gripped the railing tighter. Return fire. Show them what humanity does when it bleeds. The battleship Atlas roared. Its railguns unleashed a storm of hypervelocity slugs, glowing white from friction as they ripped through the void. The shells slammed into a Zal destroyer, punching holes straight through its jagged armor. Other Terran ships joined the storm. Missiles streaked across the dark, engines burning blue until they disappeared into enemy hulls and detonated. Entire Zal vessels cracked apart, spilling burning fragments into the void. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy witnessed humanity's art of war. Down below, the people of Vera Prime saw salvation falling from the sky. Through smoke and ash, civilians stared up as the night lit with fire. Terran fighters cut across the clouds, striking Zal landing craft before they could unleash more terror on the cities. A child, clinging to her mother's arms, pointed upward. Who are they? Her mother, tears streaming down her face, whispered, Deathworlders. In orbit, the fight turned brutal. Enemy boarding craft inbound. A sensor officer shouted. On the Resolute, alarms blared as Zal ships launched pods straight into their hull. Metallic claws pierced steel. Hatches hissed open. The first Zal soldiers stormed inside. They were tall, thin monsters wrapped in bone-like armor, their faces masked by glassy insect eyes. Their claws dripped with poison. Their voices were a hiss, a chorus of hunger. Terran Marines met them in the corridors. The first clash was savage. Pulse rifles screamed in the dark. Their blue, bolts cutting through the shadows. Zal shrieked and fell, but more poured in, climbing over their dead. Corporal Vega slammed the butt of her rifle into one of the creatures, then emptied a clip into its chest. "This is our ship," she roared. "You're not taking it." Marines pushed them back inch by inch, their boots slipping on alien blood. The corridors rang with fire and screams, a hell forged in steel. On the command deck, Admiral Hall never looked away from the larger war. "Status of the Atlas?" he demanded. "Still holding," Calder replied. "But shields at 40%. Hale's jaw tightened. The fleet was bleeding, but the Gial were bleeding too. This battle was no longer just for Vera. It was a message to the galaxy. Humanity would not kneel. "Push them back," Hale ordered, his voice carrying across every channel. "Drive them into the planet's gravity well. Burn every one of them if you must." The Terran fleet surged. Ships closed ranks, firing in waves so dense it looked like lightning crossing the void. Fighters screamed between enemy lines, weaving through deadly beams to launch torpedoes at close range. Izal vessels cracked under the assault, their hulls shattering like broken bone. One by one, they began to fall, but the Zal were not done. From the shadows of the outer system, a massive silhouette appeared, larger than any Terran ship. Its jagged form blocked the stars. Weapons burned along its sides, glowing like molten. "Rivers." Calder's eyes widened. "Admiral, it's a dreadnought." Hale's chest turned to stone. The smaller victories meant nothing now. This was the monster waiting in the dark. The Zhao dreadnought opened fire. A single blast split the void, brighter than a sun. It tore through space and slammed into the Terran cruiser Vanguard. The ship didn't explode, it was erased. The comms went silent for half a heartbeat. Then chaos roared again. Hale's voice cut through the storm. "All ships, hold the line. If we fall, Vera falls. Stand and fight." The galaxy had called humanity reckless, savage, uncivilized. But now, as the Terran fleet charged against the Yal dreadnought, One truth became clear to every soul watching from the ground and from the stars above. Reckless or not, the Deathworlders had come, and they would fight until the last breath. The dreadnought's shadow, the void, seemed to tremble. The Zal dreadnought moved like a living mountain, its jagged hull blocking the stars. Its weapons burned with unnatural light, each cannon as large as a city tower. Compared to it, even the Terran battleships looked like toys. On the Resolute's command deck, silence hung heavy after the Vanguard was erased in a single blast. The crew stared at the empty void where the cruiser had once been. Commander Calder whispered the thought in everyone's mind. How do we fight that? Admiral Halley did not blink. His face was carved with iron. We don't run. We don't bow. We fight. The dreadnought fired again. A river of crimson light cut through the darkness, striking the Atlas. The massive battleship shuddered. Whole sections tore apart, spilling fire into space. "Atlas is hit," an officer cried. "Main reactor holding barely." On the view screen, the giant ship limped, its armor glowing red. But still, the Atlas fought. Railguns fired. Torpedoes streaked out, slamming into the dreadnought's shields. The shields rippled, but they did not fall. The Terran fleet tightened ranks. Fighters swarmed the beast, small as sparks against its hull. They weaved through plasma fire, dropping charges against its armored plates. Explosions blossomed, tearing off chunks of jagged metal. Still, the dreadnought advanced. "Casualty reports coming in?" Calder said, her voice breaking. "We're losing ships." Hale's gaze stayed locked on the enemy. He knew the truth. If they did not stop this monster, Vera Prime would burn. The whole system would fall. He opened the fleet-wide channel. His voice carried through static, into every cockpit and every burning corridor. "Deathworlders," he said, steady and strong. "This is where we stand. The galaxy called us reckless. They called us dangerous. Today, they will call us saviors. Hold the line." In the void, Terran courage turned into fury. The carrier Solace launched its last wave of fighters, their engines screaming blue trails as they dove toward the dreadnought. The battleship Ironheart rotated its wounded hull and fired its spinal cannon, tearing into the dreadnought's outer plating. The dreadnought shuddered, but still it pressed forward, its weapons glowing with the energy of stars. Then, from the planet below, a desperate voice broke through the comms. It was Governor Avean of Vera Prime. "Terrans," she said, her words ragged with static. "We see you. We see your fight. On this day, know that the whole of Vera stands with you. Do not let us fall." The transmission cut, but the message struck every human heart like fire. On the Resolute, alarms blared again. Boarding pods incoming. Dozens of Zal claws tore into the ship's side. The Marines fought savagely in the corridors, but the enemy pushed deeper. Corporal Vega slammed a barricade into place and turned her rifle on the incoming wave. "This is humanity's ship," she roared, blue fire spitting from her rifle. "You want it? Come take it." The corridors turned into a slaughterhouse. Steel floors were slick with alien blood. Marines fell, but so did the Zal, their screeches echoing like nightmares. Still, the enemy kept coming. On the bridge, Admiral Hall saw his chance. The dreadnought's shields were strong, but not perfect. The swarm of fighters had torn open a wound near the port side. Energy bled from the cracks. "Mark that breach," he ordered. All ships focus fire there. The fleet responded like one organism. Missiles, railgun slugs, and torpedoes hammered the same spot. For the first time, the dreadnought's armor buckled. A chunk of its jagged plating tore away, spinning into the void. The Terran fleet roared in triumph, but the dreadnought answered. Its cannons flared again, brighter than ever. The beam struck the Ironheart. The mighty battleship groaned, its hull splitting apart. Fire spilled from every deck. The last transmission. From its captain carried through the combs. For Earth. And for Vera. Then the Ironheart was gone. The crew of the Resolute stood in silence, their faces lit by fire. The cost was unbearable. But the enemy was bleeding. Calder turned to Hawley, her voice low but burning with defiance. "Admiral, we can kill it." Hale's jaw clenched. His eyes burned with the same fire as his fleet. "Yes," he said, "but not from here, not from the outside." The room fell silent. The crew understood what he meant before he said it. We need to strike its heart. We need to go inside. The decision was madness. To board the dreadnought, to fight within its monstrous halls, that was suicide. But it was also the only way. Hawley opened the combs to every ship, every soldier still alive. His voice was calm, steady, and unyielding. "Deathworlders," he said, "prepare for the impossible. We are taking the fight into their fortress. For Earth, for Vera, for every voice that called for help and believed no one would answer, the order went out. Dropships armed and ready. Marines loading weapons with shaking hands but steady hearts. The dreadnought loomed above them like death itself. And humanity aimed straight for its heart. Into the beast, the dropships launched like sparks from a forge. Through the armored glass, soldiers saw the dreadnought filling their vision. Its jagged hull was black and red, alive with pulsing lights. It looked less like a ship and more like a wounded god, bleeding fire into space. Inside Resolute's hangar, the last wave of Marines prepared for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. "Corporal?" Vega slammed a fresh magazine into her rifle. Her armor was scarred, blood dried across one shoulder, but her eyes burned steady. "Remember," she told her squad, "this monster falls, or we do. Make it count." No one spoke back, but the silence was not fear. It was resolve. The dropships cut through fire. Zao cannons spat plasma, lighting the void. Terran fighters screamed around the dropships, buying them seconds. Some were ripped apart, bursting into silent flame. Others made it through. "Brace!" shouted the pilot. The dropship slammed against the dreadnought's hull with bone-breaking force. Magnets locked. Drills cut through armor. The ramp dropped with a hiss of steam. And humanity stepped into hell. The dreadnought's corridors were not metal. They were bone-like, twisted and alive, pulsing with veins of light. The air was thick and hot, burning the throat. The Marines moved in tight formations, rifles raised. Each step echoed with the sound of their boots. Against alien flesh-metal. Then the walls screamed. Zao warriors burst from hidden chambers, their armor jagged, their blades dripping with heat. The Marines answered with fire. Bullets and plasma streaked the halls. Vega cut one down, its blood hissing as it sprayed across her visor. "Push forward," she shouted. "We need the core." Meanwhile, Admiral Hawley remained on the Resolute, eyes locked on the tactical map. He saw each squad vanish from the screen as they fell. He said nothing, but every death weighed on him. Commander Calder stood beside him, pale but unshaken. "If they fail?" Hawley cut her off. "They won't." His voice left no room for doubt. Deeper inside the beast, the Marines fought through nightmare. Every corridor twisted, like the ship itself was trying to confuse them. The walls shifted, closing behind them. The dreadnought was alive, and it wanted them trapped. Vega's squad reached a vast chamber. A core of burning crystal throbbed in the center, protected by shield walls and dozens of Zal guardians. "This is it," Vega said, her breath heavy. "We break that core. We break the beast." The Marines opened fire. Grenades ripped through alien ranks. Rockets smashed against the shields, cracking them like glass. The room became a storm of smoke, fire, and screams, but the Ejel did not fall easily. They charged through bullets, blades cutting down humans one by one. Private Juno took a blade through her chest. She still pulled the pin on her grenade and hugged the enemy until they both disappeared in fire. The humans roared her name as they pushed forward. Then came the shadow. From above, the largest Zal warrior yet dropped into the chamber. Twice the size of any marine, its armor shimmered with alien fire. It crushed a soldier with one strike of its blade. The squad froze in horror. Vega stepped forward. Her rifle empty, her armor cracked, she drew her combat knife. "You want humanity?" She growled. "Take me first." The giant roared and charged. The fight was brutal steel against alien flesh, every blow shaking the chamber. The warrior's blade sliced into Vega's side, blood pouring. But she didn't fall. She drove her knife into its throat, ripping through glowing flesh. The beast collapsed, shaking the floor as it died. Vega dropped to one knee, coughing blood, but she smiled. The core, finish it. With fury, the Marines aimed everything they had at the glowing heart of the dreadnought. Rockets, grenades, plasma. Charges. The shield shattered. The core cracked, burning brighter and brighter until the whole chamber pulsed with light. The dreadnought screamed. The walls shook as if the ship itself felt pain. On the Resolute, alarms blared. "Admiral!" Calder shouted. "The dreadnought's core is destabilizing." The crew watched the screen as the monster began to collapse in on itself. But the dropship signals were still inside. Hale's jaw tightened. He knew the cost. "Order them out," he commanded. Static filled the comms. Then Vega's voice broke through, weak but steady. "Admiral, the core's going. But we won't make it back." The bridge froze. Vega coughed, blood thick in her throat. "Tell Earth," we answered. "Tell them," humanity answered. The line went dead. The dreadnought imploded in fire. The shockwave ripped through space, tossing Terran ships like leaves in a storm. When the light faded, the monster was gone, nothing but burning wreckage drifting across the void. The battlefield was silent. Then, one by one, human ships sent the same message across the comms. For Earth. For Vera. For humanity. The galaxy had sent an SOS. And humanity had answered, no matter the cost. The price of answering the battlefield was quiet. Too quiet. Wreckage floated across the black sea of space-broken Zal shards, burning. Fighters drifting human hulls. The dreadnought was gone, but so were many who had fought to bring it down. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Hollow stood still. His face was carved in stone, but his hands trembled behind his back. Around him, the crew whispered the same question no one dared speak aloud. Was it worth the cost? The comms cracked. Survivors called in, one by one. Eagle Squad, 5 alive. Delta Team, 2 survivors, requesting evac. Gamma is gone. Each name spoken was a wound. Each silence, a funeral bell. Hawley closed his eyes. He could still hear Vega's final words. "Tell them humanity answered." Commander Calder stepped close. Her voice was soft. "Sir, we should send the report. The council must know." Hawley nodded, his throat tight. "Prepare the message." Across the galaxy, the call traveled. The same council chambers that had mocked Earth now sat in silence as the report came through. Holograms of leaders scaled, feathered, furred listened to humanity's words. "The Zal dreadnought has been destroyed. The cost was high. The Terran Expeditionary Force answered your call. This victory is theirs. This victory is humanity's gift." The chamber erupted. Some shouted in disbelief, others in awe. One elder of the Veran race whispered, almost to himself, "We begged for salvation, and it came from the world we once called a death world." Back on the Resolute, the crew gathered in the mess hall. There were no cheers. Only a heavy silence, broken by clinking mugs and the quiet sound of grief. Rows of empty chairs stared back at them. The names of the fallen glowed on a screen, scrolling endlessly. Each name carried a story, a face, a laugh, a sacrifice. Private Rin raised his mug. His voice shook. To Juno, she hugged a monster so we could live. Others raised their mugs. To Vega, she stood against the giant. One by one, the dead were remembered, and in that grief, humanity's strength burned brighter. Days later, the fleets returned to Earth. The homeworld welcomed them with both pride and sorrow. Streets filled with people, waving flags, holding signs, with the names of their lost loved ones. Children pointed at the ships, their eyes wide, not understanding the weight of the price in the capital. Memorials were already being built, great walls of stone carved with the names of the fallen. Flowers and candles lay at the base. Strangers wept together, united by the sacrifice of those who never came home. At the ceremony, Admiral Hale stood before the galaxy's ambassadors. His uniform was dark, his voice steady. Humanity did not fight for glory. We did not fight for power. We fought because someone asked for help, and we could not ignore it. This is who we are. We are Deathworlders, yes, but we are also guardians. Remember that. The hall shook with applause, but Hale's eyes searched the crowd for the faces that were missing. He knew the cheers were not for him. They were for those who had given everything. That night, a signal went out across 1,000 worlds. The words were simple, but they would be remembered for generations. The galaxy cried out for help. Humanity answered. In time, songs were written of the battle. Stories spread in taverns and spaceports of the Terran fleet that stood when all others fled, of soldiers who charged into a living nightmare, of a people who embraced sacrifice not for conquest, but for honor. Children of alien races grew up whispering human names as heroes. Vega, Juno, Hale, their stories carried like fire in the dark. And slowly, where there had once been mockery, there was respect. Where there had been fear, there was awe. Admiral Hall walked the memorial grounds in silence. He traced his fingers across the names carved into stone. When he reached Vega's, he stopped. You told me to tell them, he whispered. I did. They know. And they will never forget. The wind carried the sound of bells, ringing softly through the night. Hyle stood tall, the weight of loss heavy, but his eyes burned with the same fire as his fallen soldiers, because humanity had proven something the galaxy could no longer deny. When the stars cried out, when darkness rose, when death itself loomed over all, it was the humans who answered, and they always would.